Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today on Behr Builds Bikes, we're going to be building a Retrospec Beaumont REV. It's a 350 watt hybrid style electric bike. This one's in crystal blue. Let's get her out of the box and get her built. So as you can probably tell, this is a much larger box than most of your average bicycles, which are probably about that tall and, about a foot shorter. So we're going to take our side cut pliers and we're going to cut the straps. Now these bikes are extremely heavy, so we're going to open the box a little bit different than we normally do. We're going to get these straps out of the way. And of course all this goes into the recycling bag over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to rip the box open at the top and we're going to look down in there to see where the wheels are, because ultimately we're going to cut one side off the box, but we want to make sure we're not cutting into a tire because those tires are extremely expensive. Styrofoam we're going to put in a different receptacle from now on. The city has requested it. All right, so tires on that side of the box right now. So we will take our nice sharp utility knife and we're going to make sure that nothing is in the corner where we're going to be cutting. On this side, we're good to go. And always be careful when using sharp implements. And the grand reveal. Here is our Beaumont REV. Like I said, very heavy bike. We're going to chop off as much as we can with the weight. Our cardboard box is actually over there right now. Careful, as you can see when I'm stepping on it, it wants to move a little bit. Plastic in there. This is our parts box. I'm just going to move this out of the way so I can get the box out of here. So as usual, one of the first things we have to do is get the wheel off the bike. We're going to cut all the zip ties. Rotor protector. Now the fender should pull off. And you may have to lift up the frame a little bit to slide the wheel off. Over to the rest of our cardboard. And we have a wheel. And of course we're going to size our clamp to the seat post. We're going to want this a little extra snug because there is a lot of weight that is on this bike, on this stand. So now we'll grease our head tube and seat tube. Get a good dollop of grease in there. Keeps things from rusting and binding later. We're going to get our seat back down into the frame, leaving plenty for the clamp. And we can tighten down the outside of the quick release because these actually are an Allen bolt. So it's nice and secure. It doesn't have to be straight, just has to be secure to be able to hold up the weight of the entire frame. We'll turn her around so the drivetrain is facing out, and we will get her up into the stand. All right. We'll go through the unpacking process, of course, in fast forward, and then when we come back on the other side, we'll start the actual assembly. Let's go. So one of the unique things about the way that they put these in, they actually use a real front axle. It's a 12mm bolt on the side. If you loosen that up, then you can loosen up the inner. And then your fork guard is easily removed. So from here we'll get into the parts box, because there are parts that are necessary. You have your owner's manual, you have your charger, you have the front headlight, the pedals, you have a rack strap that goes onto the rear rack for luggage. Comes with a few little tools and all the screws and everything that's necessary. I'm going to actually dump those out into the box so we don't lose any. Now the charger and the manual, obviously we're not going to need right now. We will unwrap our pedals. Those ready to go on. We can't put the fender on until we have the headlight, because it's part of this whole mount here. So we have our headlight. We just bend the arm down to where it's going to sit kind of level once it's up against the front of the bike. Take our bolt out. It should be hand tight. If not, it's a 10mm. And we have our fender. So with the bolt that we took out of the crown, we're going to go through the bail of the headlight, and we're going to go through the fender. Notice the orientation of the arms. Slide the fender up in, put the nut on the back. Doesn't have to be tight, just has to hold it in place for now. The fender bolts are actually here and here on the fork, which is a little unusual for this particular bike. Make sure the fender goes outside the cable so that you don't have any problems with the cable getting bound up or stretched to the outside. That's just going to promote it getting snagged on something when you're riding. So we'll keep everything tucked in. And we'll do the same on this side. Take out the fender bolt. Get it started. Make sure it's not cross-threading. Shouldn't fight you in any way going in. And I always pull back as much as I can on the fender. Gives it the maximum amount of clearance for the tire to go in. Now with either two 10mm wrenches or a screwdriver from the front, or however you want to do it, whatever is comfortable for you, we're going to start getting this thing tightened down. Once it starts to get to where it's just touching and you can maneuver your headlight a little bit, push up on the fender, make sure it's giving maximum clearance for the tire. And hold the nut in the front, turn the one on the back. That'll help to keep everything from trying to shift around while you're tightening it. Because if this side of the screw is turning, it's going to want to turn the headlight. It's going to want to do a lot of things you don't want it to do at the moment. All right, so that's all in. The headlight, we can straighten as we need to. We're going to loosen up the bolts on the caliper here and here, because we know that the front wheel has never been in this frame. So we don't want to bend the rotor of the front wheel. These are very tight. Just get these loose enough to where the caliper moves freely. We are going to inflate our tire. This is a 700 by 45C. I don't know if you can see that, should be able to. It's a pretty good sized tire, and these go up to between 40 and 65 PSI. So let's get her inflated and we'll get her onto the bike. So now we're going to loosen up our axle nuts so that we can get it up into the fork. These do have the lawyer tab style washers on them with the little notch. I'm sure you can see that there. Rotor obviously on that side, tire direction pointing that way. Any type of tread that has like an arrow style pattern goes that way. We're going to gently slide her up into the fork, making sure that the disc rotor goes up into the caliper. I'm going to put my knee under the wheel so that I have basically a third hand. Just get these snug for now until we can actually center the wheel in the frame. Make sure the little lawyer tabs go into the little holes, the receptacles in the fork for them. And you notice how the front of the fender is down and the back is away. Well, all we have to do is pull down on the fork, on the fender braces, and it'll clearance our wheel for us. Then with a 15mm wrench, and make sure everything is straight. You can manipulate these fenders a little bit. They can be bent a little, tweaked to where they're in line with the tire. The only rubbing I'm going to hear right now is coming out of the rotor, hitting the caliper. We're going to adjust that. Basically, we're going to pull on the brake lever here. We're going to just lightly tighten down the holding bolts so that it's somewhat stable. Then we're going to look through the rotor. I'm going to move you in closer so you can see it so that we can get that aligned properly. All right, it is kind of hard to see. You can see the rotor turning. We do have that fender in the tire there, so it's going to keep throwing focus for me. So we can keep it in focus. You can see it in there. It's pretty centered right now. I'm going to tighten it down a little bit and then we'll test it. All right, so the brake is not touching. It's not rubbing on either side. Everything is good with the alignment. It stops relatively well. We are going to give it a little bit more tension just on the adjuster barrel until we can just hear it start to rub. Hear it rub? And we'll back that off just till it's not rubbing. Then we can reach through and tighten the inner pad a little bit going clockwise. And that gives us the most positive feel for the brake. We'll now move on to setting up the handlebars, getting all the controls where we want them, moving everything around, getting everything dialed in. We haven't tightened down the stem bolt yet, but we'll do that next. All right, so all the controls, the throttle, which is right here, we want it to be in a place where your thumb is going to be able to easily access it. It is an Allen bolt that tightens it down underneath. This particular one is a 3mm, because you don't want the whole housing shifting around when you're pressing on the throttle. And get that nice and snug. And then the actual controller unit that's next to it, same thing, 3mm. We want it to be far enough away from the throttle so that the throttle does not get hung up on that controller at all. I'm giving it about a half a finger's width. We'll tighten down that bolt so that the controller doesn't move. You do want it to be at a good angle so that when your face is up here, you're looking down at the controller and you're not, you know, having to look under your handlebar, or you want it in a comfortable position. Now with the Phillips head, we're going to tighten down the bell that comes with these. I'm going to get a little closer to the shifter. And that's just a Phillips head underneath. And these, the striker could be moved back and forth. We know that works. Make sure that our brake levers aren't moving, that everything here is good. Now when we stuck the stem in, we didn't tighten anything down, because we're going to do that when it's on the floor. It is snug enough already that we can tolerate it. We're going to make sure that these wires have space to go underneath the headlight if the handlebars do turn. I'm going to tighten down the bolt on the side of the headlight to actually aim it. And then we're going to put our pedals on. So as always, we're going to put a little grease on the spindles. Make sure that they don't bind going into the cranks. They do have stickers, right, left, so we know the right one's going to go on the right side, starting it clockwise, not counterclockwise. We're going to let the threads mate on their own. We're not going to force anything. Once it's gotten 2 or 3 good turns into it, we'll go to the other side. We're going to put that into the crank arm, and we're going to start its motion clockwise. It's going that way to go in. Once we've got it to that point, we're going to take our handy dandy pedal wrench, because I think everybody should have one of these if they're going to work on bikes. And you're going to pedal around backwards till it locks down. Now you can either grab the wheel and use the chain to force the pedal, or you can reach through and grab the other pedal. I'm trying to stand on this side, so I'm going to do it by holding the rear wheel. And then hold that wheel down. See, if you pedal the wheel backwards with tension on the crank, you can really tighten that thing down. I'm going to make sure that the rear tire is inflated. Then we're going to work on our gears and the disc brake on the rear. These from the factory are pretty well set up. Don't usually have too many issues with the shifting. The brake may have a little rub to it because, like I said, they're mass produced. Cap back on, and now let's test our gears. So we're in first gear now. We hit the click button to go up 1, it should drop a gear, which it did. I'm going to go all the way down. You see how it's not dropping into 7th right now? It's because the derailleur is actually bent in a little bit. I'm going to move the camera so I can show you. Sometimes this happens from the factory. Alright, so this is a pretty good example of an alignment issue. You can see how that derailleur is really kicked in towards the frame. Some of it is at the frame in the hanger, some of it is actually in the derailleur. Now, there is a tool that you can use to align that dropout in the frame. It's a derailleur hanger alignment tool. If you don't have one, you can always put in your 5mm, grab the derailleur, and gently bend the derailleur to where it's going to be straight with the gears, and it should drop into 7th like that. Now, it may be that you have to add more tension so that that goes into a straight line. As you can see, as I'm turning this out, the chain is actually pulling over, the whole derailleur is pulling over to where it's more in a straight line. Now when we go up or down one gear, it should go directly into that gear and stay between the chain rings. Right now it's a little advanced. We're going to back off a little bit of that cable tension. And maybe we'll give it a little bit more. Now we're going to adjust the stop screw to make sure that the derailleur can go over. We're going to use the low stop screw, which is the lower of the two, and just back it out a little bit. And of course, you can hear the rotor rubbing on the caliper on the brake side. Most times I do that first. This one, I happen to see an issue, so I wanted to address it. Now, as I click through the gears, all right, once again, one click, drops it down one gear each time. Now we're going to work on that brake. So of course, like the other ones, we're going to loosen up the holding bolts just a little bit so that the caliper will move. All right. So I generally like to shine a light alongside the rotor through the caliper so I can see if it's touching the brake pads in any way. Trying to keep her in focus for you so you guys can see that. And you can obviously hear that it's not rubbing. So from here, we're going to gently tighten down these bolts and listen for any rubbing along the way in case something shifts. And then once we are satisfied, we will actually torque these bolts down. And we can check our fender braces on the inside and outside, make sure everything is tight there. But the brake seems to be in good shape. We are going to test how well it stops. Not too bad at all. Definitely want an electric bike to be able to stop. See if you can see that better now. Sorry about the wiggle. And we always have the adjuster barrel here that we can add more tension to the cable just until the brake pad starts to rub. That'll obviously give us a lot more braking force. You see how little that caliper arm has to move to actually make contact with the rotor itself. Hopefully that stayed in focus. All right, so these have been sitting here the whole time. Make sure that everything lays flat. There is a little tang in the back that hooks. See how it's got the little slot? Hook the little tang into the slot. Stretch it over. Simple little luggage strap. Now we're going to take the bike down. We're going to adjust the seat angle. We're going to make sure the handlebars are in alignment. We will go ahead and put the charger on the battery. It's going to need at least 6 hours for it to charge fully. After that, we'll take her for a ride. But gears work, brakes work, tires are inflated. Everything should be good. Let's get her down. Let's get that seat adjusted. Like any other standard micro adjust seat post, you have the ability to slide the seat forward and backward on the rails if you need to, depending on the rider that's going to be on it. You definitely want the seat to be as level as possible. If you were to put a straight edge across it, you want it to be leveled just for being in the middle of the road. For test ride purposes, you will obviously adjust this to the specifics of the rider who is going to take it home. That is part of the fitment process that will occur with any new bike being sold at our shop. Everybody gets fitted. We make sure the rider compartment is proper for the rider. We make sure the stem height is right, that the handlebar angle, and that the brakes and controls are easy to be accessed. Make sure that's nice and tight. This bike does have a kickstand. Make sure she's sitting on the floor. We're going to drop the seat down. Doesn't have to be all the way. We're going to make sure that our handlebars are aligned with the front wheel. This is the old school method. Put the wheel between your legs, line everything up that way, and then you'll come back around. Just get that bolt snug for now. Let's turn her around so you guys can see it from the other angle. And I line it up from the bolts to the tip of the stem to the front tire, to the very front of the tire. Sometimes you got to give it a little tap, get it in line, and really lock it down. You definitely don't want anything on an electric bike to be loose. The stakes are a little bit higher with these because you are powered. Testing the brakes. Make sure that the pitch of the handlebars is where you want them. 6mm bolt from underneath. Gonna tighten that up. All right, looks like we're in good shape. So, like I said, we will hook up the charger. It does have a user's manual, the power block, and the actual power cord that plugs into it. We're going to plug it in to the little jack on the side of the battery here. These have a switch underneath to turn the battery on. And it'll show you how much charge is in it. Right now it's at just about nothing. Turn that back off. We're going to plug it in. About 6 hours to a full charge. And this one's pretty much ready to go. There's not a lot to the assembly on these. It's just making sure that everything is super tight and dialed in. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. I hope you've learned a little something about these bikes. We do have these for sale at Lee's Bikes at 1101 North Federal Highway in Hollywood, Florida. You can give us a call at any time, 954-925-5157. I, here at Behr Builds Bikes, am doing all the assemblies of these here in my home on my days off. So, hope to see you in the next one. Please like, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful day.